They say the truth always finds its way home, even if it has to crawl through blood, secrets, or shame. That truth came wrapped in silence for a girl named Amira, the kind of silence that smells like old wood, like sickness, like things left unsaid for too long. She had no idea her life would change forever, not by a kiss, not by love, but by a decision made out of desperation. But before that, let us tell you who Amira was. She was born in the sun-baked village of Iboko, a place where goats walked the same paths as dreams, dusty, crooked, and always uphill. Her mother, Mama Dola, once worked as a helper in the local herbal clinic. She had strong hands, tired eyes, and a voice that sounded like it had cried too much in secret. Amira never knew her father. He was just a name whispered when people thought she was asleep. Akunya, a man who sold fabrics and stories. He vanished before she was born, leaving Mama Dola with nothing but swelling feet and a heart too heavy for one chest. Some folks in Iboko claimed he went to Tambari City. Others said he died in the bush, but no one could prove anything. And Mama Dola never said much, just worked, limped, and raised her daughter with the kind of love that stung. At 13, Amira was tall for her age, sharp eyes, quieter than most. That was when her mother began to speak differently. "Amira," she would say while twisting her wrapper at the waist, "don't be foolish like me. Don't open your legs to sweet tongues. Marry wealth, not passion. Love won't feed you yam when the roof leaks." Each word came not just from a lesson, but from a wound. Their house was a 2-room mud home with a zinc roof that clattered when rain fell. No fridge, no fan, just a kerosene lamp that gave more heat than light. They boiled water on charcoal and cooled anger with silence. But even in that lack, Amira dreamed. At 18, she left Iboko with a borrowed bag and 7,000 gyena stuffed into her bra. Her destination, Kajo City, a place where the buildings touched. The sky and the people barely touched each other. She enrolled in the National College of Numbers, studying accountancy. By day, she sat in classes filled with voices louder than hers. By evening, she tutored rich kids in houses that smelled of air freshener and foreign spices. She was beautiful, but not the kind that wore tight skirts or red lipstick. Her beauty was quiet, like river stones smoothed by time. Amira believed in sweat, in small wins, in going home with clean hands. But Kajo City isn't a place that respects clean hands. It's a place that eats them. By 24, her back ached from standing too long. Her eyes stung from screen light. Her purse never stayed full. And just when she thought things couldn't stretch thinner, they snapped. One Thursday afternoon, she got a call. Mama Dola had fainted while walking to the borehole. The hospital. SOD, kidney failure. Dialysis was 90,000 GNA per session. She needed it 3 times a week. Amira had 6,800 GNA to her name. She sold her laptop, pawned her phone, begged a former tutor, and took a small loan from the bakery where she bought bread every Sunday. Still not enough. One humid evening, after finishing a lesson in Alumide Heights, a gated community where the walls were higher than most dreams, her student's mother called her aside. Madame Iredi, a tall woman with skin like roasted groundnut and perfume like imported flowers. "My dear," she said gently, pouring Amira a glass of cold zobo, "I've watched you for weeks. You're a strong girl, but strong girls still need help." Amira blinked. "Help from who?" "A man I know, elderly, rich, quiet. He's not chasing romance, just company. Someone to keep the silence from swallowing him." Amira chuckled, dry and bitter. "You mean a sugar uncle?" "No," Madame Iredi said firmly. "He wants a wife, not a flame. His loneliness is deeper than lust. He's lost his light, and he's looking for peace. Someone like you." Amira refused that night. But the next day, the hospital handed her a bill that made her hands shake. The doctor's face grew colder. "If payment isn't made," he said, "we'll have to discharge your mother." That night, Amira went home and cried into a pillow stuffed with old clothes. By morning, she was knocking on Madame Iretti's door. The man's name was Baba Khalid, 67, skin like dry leather, eyes that wandered when he spoke. Their first meeting was quiet. He offered her ginger biscuits and spoke in long, slow riddles. After a while, he stopped dodging the truth. "Marry me," he said, "and your mother will never lack again." Amira felt her body freeze. Not because she didn't understand, but because she did, too well. She said yes 2 days later. There were no drums, no choir. Just a quiet signing of papers and a promise sealed with silence. Amira told no one. In Iboko, not even her best friend in Kajo, when she showed them his photo, someone laughed and said, "This one?" His brain probably resets every 5 minutes. After the wedding, Baba Khalid moved her into a pastel yellow duplex on Oho Lane. There was a gate with golden spikes, a house help named Saad, and an envelope of cash that made her dizzy. She paid off her mother's hospital bill in one visit. The nurses even called her Madam, but the peace was empty. Baba Khalid didn't yell. He didn't curse. He didn't even touch her without asking. But he was like a clock stuck at 1 hour. He ate 3 meals, plain okra, dry fish pap, no pepper, no joy, just function. Every night, he sat in his brown chair and watched Abba TV, the government channel, same news, same faces, same sigh. He slept by 8 p.m., snoring gently, like a baby who forgot how to cry. Amira tried to love him, or at least like him. But it was hard to feel warmth from a man who only came alive when talking about who ruled in 1984. She missed little things, late-night jokes, arguments about nothing, a hug that didn't feel like a duty. She was married, yes, but she was alone. Then came the lightning. One morning, she found 3 missed calls from an international number. That evening, the compound gate opened with a screech, and a tall woman with fiery eyes walked in. Halima, Baba Khalid's first daughter. From his first life, she stormed into the living room like she paid the rent. "I don't care what game you're playing," she spat. "This marriage? It won't stand. You must think we're fools." Amira didn't answer. She just stood there, feeling small. That night, while walking barefoot around the garden, trying to calm her breath, Amira saw something strange. A folded note, left near the pawpaw tree. She opened it. "Your husband is hiding something. Look deeper." She looked around. The gateboy was missing. The cameras faced the wrong direction. She said nothing. She slipped the note under her pillow. Later that night, after Baba Khalid had snored into silence, she tiptoed into his study. The room smelled like dust and old tobacco. She opened the metal cabinet. Papers, files, stamps. Then, an envelope, thick, brown, heavy. Her hands trembled. She opened it. Hospital letters. Seals from King's Reach Memory Center in Tambari. Dates from 3 years ago. Diagnosis: early onset brain degeneration. She read further. Memory lapses, confusion, paranoia, recommended. Stable companionship, minimal stress, and emotional care. Amira sat back slowly. So it wasn't love, not even loneliness, it was survival. He didn't marry her for joy. He married her to keep his world from slipping away. She thought she had played a clever game, but she was the one who had been played. It wasn't until the silence turned thick with tension that Amira understood the truth. Halima's rage had nothing to do with inheritance. It was fear, pure, raw fear. Not of losing money, but of losing control. If Baba Khalid's mind crumbled, which it already had begun to do, Amira wouldn't just be the wife. She'd become the final voice, the one with the legal right to speak over lands, companies, and properties older than her own existence. Her name on a page could shift entire empires. She used to think she was a placeholder in this marriage. A beautiful comfort, a nurse in disguise. But now, she saw what she really was. A threat wearing lipstick. She climbed the stairs quietly that night, her steps soft against the tiled floor. Her heart thudded, not in fear, but realization. Inside the bedroom, Baba Khalid sat on the edge of the bed, staring out into the evening sky as if he was looking for someone who left decades ago. Without turning his head, he spoke. You're the one who brings me rice sometimes, right? Amira stood still. Yes, Baba. Good. I hate going to bed hungry. My wife, God rest her, used to portion our eggs like gold. Tell me, are you that woman? Her throat tightened. The question was simple, but behind it sat 1,000 ghosts. I think you need to rest now, she said gently. He nodded, slowly lowering himself into the bed as she pulled the blanket over his legs. But even as his breathing steadied, her own refused to calm. That night, sleep didn't come for her, only thoughts. By morning, she found Halima already seated in the living room. Her expression was different, not fiery, not cold, just ... Tired. I don't despise you, Amira, she said, not looking up. I just wish you knew what you agreed to. Amira lowered herself into a chair opposite her. He chose me. I didn't hunt him down. Halima gave a sad, dry laugh. You think this is about choosing? My mother gave everything to him. Her youth, her health. And at the end, he couldn't even remember her name. Silence wrapped around them like a wet shawl. So I'm here to carry what she carried, Amira said quietly. Halima shook her head. No, you're here to make him feel alive again. You are not a bride. You are a bandage. That evening, Baba Khalid reached out for Amira as they lay in bed. He kissed her cheek, then slowly moved toward her lips, like an old memory trying to resurface. But midway, his breath caught, his hands trembled. Maybe. Let's just sleep, he whispered with a forced chuckle. She smiled, turned over, and faced the wall. The pattern began. Every time he reached out, something stopped him. A forgotten motion, a cough, a soft apology. And the one night when he did finally hold her like a man again, he slept for 10 hours straight, his breath deep, mouth ajar, snoring like a tired child. The next morning, over tea, he said with a grin, that part of me? It seems it's taken early retirement. Didn't even send in a letter. Amira smiled, but something inside her bent like a tired reed. This wasn't a marriage anymore. Not by any measure of the word. She was a companion, a caregiver, an unpaid nurse in gold earrings. Weeks passed. One morning, Amira stepped into their room and paused. There was a sharp odor, sharp like hospital corridors and antiseptic wipes. The bed was wet. Baba Khalid lay there, breathing peacefully, unaware of the mess. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She just fetched a bucket, a towel, a bottle of herbal soap, and cleaned him like he was a baby who didn't know shame. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, he was awake, embarrassed, helpless. Maybe you should order those. Those adult pants, he mumbled, eyes refusing to meet hers. Amira simply nodded. I'll take care of it, Baba. The house grew quiet after that, too quiet. The cook now stepped lightly. The housekeeper spoke in whispers. The driver pretended not to notice anything. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a waiting room for the inevitable. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, not sure if they were waiting for Baba Khalid to pass or for Amira to give up and leave. But she didn't, even when he forgot how to unlock his phone. Even when he whispered to a photo frame, calling it by his late wife's name. Even when he wandered outside barefoot at 2 a.m., muttering about needing to collect rent from tenants in Kaduna. She stayed. She slept in 3-hour intervals, always half listening for footsteps. Drawers opening, a glass falling, anything that signaled another episode. One night, after wrapping him in a fresh adult diaper, she helped him lie down, gently tucking the sheets around him. His hands, wrinkled and weak, reached for hers. "I can feel it," he murmured. "It's like my thoughts. They're becoming smoke." She blinked back tears. "You're not vanishing," she said. "You're just resting more." He gave a soft smile. "When I saw you, the first day, you looked like quiet water. I needed quiet. That's why I asked you to stay." She sat with him until sleep pulled his eyes shut. Then she cried. Not loudly, just enough to feel something again. Because it wasn't love. It was sorrow for being the right person, chosen for the wrong reasons. Weeks later, the family lawyer arrived. He carried with him the final blow, a will. All of Baba Kharid's wealth, power, lands, companies. Everything would be passed to Amira, but only if she remained his wife, fully and faithfully, until his 70th birthday. If she left before then, or broke her vows, every single thing would be donated to charity. That night, she sat by the window, counting months, weeks, days on her fingers. In the bedroom, Baba Kharid looked at her and squinted. "You're the woman from the blue house in Kaduna, aren't you? You used to sing while grinding millet." Amira paused. She smiled. "Yes, Baba, that was me." Because what could she say? That she didn't know the man she married? That his body was here, but his memories were scattered like dry leaves? She was no longer just a misunderstood bride. She was the ghost of a nurse, the shadow of a daughter, a caretaker of two dying worlds. Every Thursday and Sunday, she disappeared from the mansion under the guise of shopping or spa appointments. Instead, she slipped into the worn hallway of Ashaka General Hospital, where a thin woman with tired eyes waited in silence. Mama Dola, still alive, still struggling, still hers. Amira used a false name for hospital records. Paid in cash were sunglasses. No one in the mansion knew. She would sponge her mother's back, whisper prayers in her ear, press her forehead gently like she did when Amira was a child. Then she would rush back, reapply her lipstick, and walk into a house where a man called her by another woman's name. At 28, she lived like someone's grandmother and someone else's ghost. But there was no space for regret, only duty. Because sometimes strength is not a choice. Sometimes it's a consequence. A diamond formed under someone else's burden. The message arrived just before dawn. A hospital nurse with a soft butt. Urgent voice left a voicemail. "Madam, we need to speak with you about your mother's condition. It's declining fast. Please come in as soon as possible." Amira's heart dropped. Her body felt like it had been emptied and filled with ice. Two people were dying, one slowly forgetting the world, the other being forgotten by it. She sat down on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the calendar hung above the fridge. A red circle marked Chief's 70th birthday, exactly. 8 months and 2 days away. If she made it to that date, she would inherit everything. That thought, bitter and wrong, somehow kept her upright. But surviving 8 months in that house felt like crossing the desert barefoot. That night, just before 4 a.m., she heard a ruckus from the hallway. She rushed out to find Baba Kharid standing in front of the full-length mirror, wearing his wrapper like a blouse, tied across his chest. He pointed at his reflection, fuming. "You again. Go back to your husband's house. I told you I'm married." Amira stood frozen. "This woman," he said, pointing again, "she keeps following me. I told you she's the one from before." It was madness, a kind that pierced like thorns. But she didn't cry. She didn't scold. She stepped forward slowly, took his hand, and spoke with the calmness of a mother quieting a frightened child. "Come, let's lie down, Baba. The mirror won't chase you anymore." She tucked him back into bed, but she didn't sleep. She lay in the armchair at the corner of the room, watching him snore gently, wondering if there was anything left in him that remembered her name. The next morning, she made her way to Ishaka General Hospital to see her mother. The doctor's expression told her more than his words did. He walked her through her mother's latest scans. The kidneys were weakening, the blood pressure kept dropping. The heart was working too hard for too little reward. "She's holding on," he said softly, but barely. As Amira stepped back into the house that afternoon, Baba Khalid collapsed in the bathroom. Blood, urine, silence. She screamed for the driver, wrapped him in a towel, and they raced back to the hospital. He was stabilized. But something had shifted. Even his good days were now unpredictable. He would smile and then, halfway through eating, forget how to hold a spoon. Amira became three people in one body. A wife who had to smile through madness. A daughter who cried silently in clinic corridors. And a survivor, counting the days like a prisoner scratching walls with a spoon. One morning she sat in the kitchen, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. The cup had been full 3 hours ago. She hadn't taken a sip. She just sat numb, listening to the ticking clock and waiting for whatever would break next. She couldn't do it anymore. She picked up the phone and called the hospital. "Mama," she said, voice shaking, "I'm bringing you here. This house is big. I can get help. I don't want to run back and forth anymore." The next day, her mother was wheeled into the house in a private ambulance. For the first time in months, Amira smiled. Finally, she could breathe. She would care for both of them under the same roof. But peace, it seems, had become a stranger in that house. One afternoon, as Amira sat beside her mother, helping her sip pap from a spoon, Baba Khalid started mumbling loudly from the living room. His voice was rising, garbled, mixing old proverbs with complaints about long-dead neighbors. Mama Dola paused mid-sip. Her spoon clinked against the cup. "Go see what he needs," she said, almost kindly. "That man, he's not well. He needs you more than I do right now." Amira hesitated. "Mama, let me just finish feeding you first." "No," her mother said, her eyes narrowing. "Go now, I'll manage." As Amira stood and turned toward the hallway, her mother suddenly pushed herself off the bed, her bones creaking, but determination stronger than pain. She followed slowly behind her daughter. What happened next would break the sky in two. Her mother entered the living room, looked at the man slouched in the chair, and froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Then suddenly, a scream, not loud, but sharp, as if something ancient had just snapped. Her hands began to shake. Her eyes darted from Amira to the old man and back again. "It's him," she whispered. Amira frowned. "Who, Mama?" Her mother grabbed her wrist with a strength that surprised them both. "That man, Amira. That's your father." The world cracked. No, Mama, what are you saying?" "I know his face. I know that scar near his ear. I know how he used to laugh through his nose. It's him." Amira stood rooted. She shook her head. Her mother pulled her into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling as she spoke. "He said he'd build a life with me. He promised me the moon. But the moment I told him I was with child, he vanished. No letters, no visits, nothing." She stared at the floor, her voice hollow. "And now, the man who left me with a swollen belly is the one lying in your bed?" Amira's legs buckled. She fell to her knees. "Mama, how is this possible?" "I didn't know. There was no resemblance. He never said a thing." Then her mother asked the question she had feared since the moment the truth began to settle. "Has he touched you?" Amira looked away. Silence. Tears welled up, but she said nothing. That silence said everything. Her mother leaned back, suddenly looking 10 years older. For days she barely spoke. Her appetite vanished. Her laughter, what little was left, disappeared. Amira tried to carry on. She cooked. She gave her mother medication. She fed Baba Khalid like a child and cleaned up after him like a nurse. but she was breaking. One evening, as she changed the bedsheets, her mother finally spoke. "Amira," she said quietly. She turned. "Yes, Mama? Tell me the truth. Please, don't hide it anymore. Did he touch you?" Amira froze. Her hands tightened around the blanket. "Yes," she said, barely audible. "Only a few times. I thought I was helping us survive. I didn't know he was him." Her mother looked up at the ceiling, as if searching for air or heaven or a reason not to scream. She whispered, "You married your own father." "I didn't know," Amira whispered back, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I swear on your breath, I didn't know." "How do we fix this?" she asked. "What do we do now?" But there were no answers, only silence. A few hours later, Amira returned to the room and found her mother staring blankly ahead. "Please don't go quiet on me," she said. But her mother's eyes were empty. Amira leaned close. "Mama?" Then the beeping started. The monitors, the mirror reached for her, shook her. "Mama, Mama, please. Wake up." But her mother was still. Her hand, once warm and steady, slid from Amira's grip like sand falling through fingers. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just sat there, holding the hand that had once held her through every storm, now cold, now gone. That night, Amira didn't sleep. She sat by the window and asked the sky one question. Did my truth kill her? While the world inside Amira was collapsing in silent ruins, Baba Khalid sat peacefully in his room, flipping through a photo album that smelled of dust and mothballs. His eyes lingered on each picture like a man trying to recognize his own reflection in a fogged mirror. He chuckled at a photo of his late wife. Then moments later, he frowned, unsure why she looked familiar. He didn't remember the woman who now lived in his house. He didn't recall asking her to marry him. He didn't even know a funeral had happened just 2 weeks ago for a woman he once loved, abandoned, and accidentally reunited with through the womb of his own daughter. He couldn't have known. But Amira did. She buried her mother with hands that shook only in private. The funeral was quiet, simple, dignified. She made sure of that. No music, no dancing. Just a soft prayer and a deep, final breath of closure, or so she thought. She sat through the service with her face blank, but inside, something had shattered beyond repair. Grief didn't howl through her like a windstorm. It stayed like a rock pressed into her chest, still, silent, heavy. In the days that followed, she returned to the mansion like a visitor, not a wife. Her movements became mechanical, like a woman fulfilling the last few minutes of a terrible job she couldn't quit just yet. Because the will was still active, the clock still ticking. She had to last until Baba Khalid's 70th birthday. Just months away. Each passing day felt like dragging a broken leg across burning coals. And then, one morning, a silence louder than grief. She entered his room with his breakfast tray and paused. He was seated but still. His face calm. His hand resting gently on his lap, his chest not rising. She placed the tray down, stepped closer, and gently touched his arm. No movement, no breath, no goodbye. The man who once commanded fear in boardrooms, who once charmed women with laughter and tales of wartime politics, was now as still as his secrets. Amira stood by the bed, staring at him for a long, long time. Not one tear left her eyes. What could she cry for? For the father she never knew? For the husband who had no idea what he had done? For herself, the woman left holding a life soaked in tragedy? She didn't cry. She just exhaled, as if something long overdue had finally released her from bondage. That afternoon, she went room by room packing up his medications, folding the wrappers he'd forgotten on chairs, wiping away the dust of confusion and shame. Not like a grieving widow, but like a survivor clearing the wreckage. The funeral came and went like smoke. No wails, no fanfare, only tension wrapped in lace. The children came, Halima and the others, their faces twisted with questions, their hearts stiff with offense. But when Amira told them the truth, when she sat them down and recounted how she'd unknowingly married the man who abandoned her mother, when she told them how she had discovered the horror too late and carried both shame and sacrifice in silence, they went cold. Halima was the first to speak. "I'm not touching a single thing in this cursed estate," she said, shaking her head. "This is deeper than money." One by one, they packed their bags and returned overseas. No fights, no court battles. Just exit, because no one wanted to carry the weight of what had happened inside that house. The news spread like wildfire. Voices whispered behind gates. People who once greeted her with warmth now crossed the street when she passed. Isn't that the girl who, didn't she marry her own? They never said it fully. They didn't have to. The shame had a name now. It was Amira. She never remarried. She never left the mansion. She lived in that quiet house with a driver, a cook, and memories that refused to sleep. She would sit on the balcony some nights, watching the sky, holding a cup of untouched tea, and wonder, what would my life have been if truth came earlier? Years passed, but even then, the wound never fully healed. Sometimes the greatest tragedies are not caused by war or storms, but by silence. The silence of a parent who disappears. The silence of a child raised without answers. The silence that leads two strangers into the arms of the same blood. If you've ever walked away from a truth, go back, before the truth walks into destruction. Because abandoned children don't just lose parents, they lose protection. And when protection is lost, destiny can collide in unthinkable ways. If this story touched something in you, don't just scroll, respond. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it.